rarely hear of people be like, yeah, I want to leave a legacy, I'm going to go do accounting.
There are a few things I can count on my hand that are extremely important in life, and money is one of them. And I think it's actually a sign of poverty, where they assume that somebody's wealthy or rich, that they're a bad person, they're an evil person. We think that you can't become successful in the world and then have a good afterlife. The key is to have the best of both, and that is possible. Immigrant communities that hold on to their culture are the ones who end up impacting America the most.
I was always told, if you ever want to go into business, never do it with family.
Only sit at the dinner table with people who you would starve with. People that I would starve with are my brothers.
What should young men be looking at in a spouse?
They naturally want a gentleman as a husband, somebody who's going to look after them. They want to feel like you're not going to be a little sissy. I put the ball in the guy's court. The man needs to become a man. They need to put down the video games. Take care of yourself as a man first before you try to take care of another life.
On those days where you're mentally exhausted, when you're tired, where do you go on those days?
Accounting in general has one of the highest suicide rates out of every profession. It's so hard to even answer this question because...
Before we start today's episode, I just wanted to thank you for taking the time out of your day and giving this podcast to listen. And I also wanted to remind you that the only way this podcast will ever grow is with your support and with your help. So subscribe to the podcast, like this video, and now let's get the show started.
Welcome aboard Middle East Airlines.
والمتوجهة إلى
طيران الشرق الأوسط يرحب
مدينة القدس العربية.
Khalil, how are you?
Jay Money.
Thank you for coming.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So, first of all, I want you to introduce yourself, but I always tell everyone, don't introduce yourself the way everyone knows you. Introduce yourself as if you're looking in the mirror. How do you see yourself? Like, who's Khalil to Khalil is the question.
So I'd like to think that my name Khalil, which was given to me by my parents, it fits me. And I've never realized it more than I have recently. The name Khalil originates from the English word friend. Khalil was given to, Khalil Allah was the title given to Prophet Abraham, which just translates to friend of God. So my father's name is Abraham, decided to name Khalil, and I've named my son Abraham, and he's going to name his son Khalil. We already have that agreement. So being that the name Khalil translates to friend, I believe that that's what best describes me. Of course, we have family, you have friends, but there's a lot of family members who aren't necessarily friends. So Khalil as a person is a friend to all, a friend to family, a friend to friends. So I feel like that's the deepest meaning of who I am. But more than that, it's when I look in the mirror, I see a young man, no matter what age I end up become, and I see a hard worker. I don't usually talk too much about myself, but it's something that I take pride in. I see an honorable man. I see a father. I see a husband. I see a son. I see a brother. I see a friend. And I feel like it's not about me. So when I look in the mirror, I'm not looking at a reflection of myself. Yeah, I see myself physically. I see the way I look. I see the pierciness I have in my eyes, the stress that I take on, and that's just in the physical strength that I have or embody. That's just a physical image of what I embody mentally and spiritually, and that's how I interpret myself.
No, that's how you look at yourself in the mirror.
Yeah.
How did you end up here? So the podcast is not from here, and we're both not from here. What's the story? How did you come here, or how did your parents come here?
So I was born in Dearborn, Michigan. My parents they went to elementary school here. They went to middle school, high school. So they came here very young. My great-grandfather came to this country. My grandfather came to this country. And so I'm proud of being from here, to be honest. Now, but at the same time, I feel like I have a natural feeling that I embody that's almost a yin and yang, or like a push and pull, where I am from here, from America, born and raised, but not from here, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Because, people always ask, so where are you from? I say, from Michigan. They say, no, where are you from? I say, I'm Lebanese, and I'm proud of that. I'm very proud of that.
Yeah.
So, but we grew up in an American household. We didn't speak Arabic at home. I wish we would have spoken the language a lot more at home, but culturally, religiously, we had it. We probably have it more than the Lebanese people do back home. And I am proud to be Lebanese. The first time I actually went to Lebanon was in 2012. So I wasn't like, my family didn't always go to Lebanon.
Yeah.
First time my parents went back was probably 30 years after they actually moved here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so there's no ties back to home besides the houses there and family members that visit. So I don't have any relatives. I have an aunt who lives in Beirut, but we don't have any family that actually immediate family that lives in Lebanon. But culturally, religiously, spiritually, I do feel like I'm still Lebanese and I'm from the land. And when I went there in 2012, I was so proud to be from there. Like, it felt so natural and surreal that smelling the air, like,
Yeah.
wow, this is home. Like, this is where the ancestors, this is where the bloodline all began. And for me, those were some of the feelings I had, but I also had feelings like, wow, I'm so proud to be born and raised in America, because we actually had more opportunity to choose the culture or
Yeah.
choose the faith that we belong to.
You basically picked what part of the culture to implement and what part to keep out just because you were far away. That's how it is. When we live here, you get to choose, okay. Because when you're in Lebanon, this is the culture, you're immersed in it, Here you kind of take the best parts of our culture and implement that in your day to day. So how old were you when you went back in 2012?
So this was about, let's say, 11 years ago. So I was 23
Okay.
years old.
Okay.
Yeah, so I actually went when I was engaged with my wife. Yeah, so it wasn't, I went to Dubai, and before it was Dubai, before it was
Yeah.
popping on social media, and it was amazing. So the deal was, so my mother-in-law lives in Dubai, okay, and my wife, we were going to visit her, and the deal was, I will only go to Dubai if we go to Lebanon. Like, I'm not flying all the way to the Middle East and not going to Lebanon.
Was that your first time in Lebanon?
That's my first time, and it was my wife's first time as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
It was a cool experience. You guys both there for the first time.
it was a great experience. When I was in Dubai, my heart was in Lebanon.
Yeah.
Like, I was just ready for the next half of the trip.
Yeah.
But it was a great experience. It was a great bonding experience. We got to see two incredible countries.
Wow. You never went back since?
Haven't been back since. I'd love to, but we have priorities right
Yeah.
now that we want to take care of.
Yeah.
And it's definitely on the my bucket list, I'd say.
I think it's hard because you said that you don't have like immediate family there right now, or not a lot of immediate family there. So part of what connects us and makes like someone like me, with both my parents are there, that I have to go see, like the whole family is there, all my friends. So I would understand that, yeah, maybe you don't feel like that urgency, like I have to go right now. Yeah.
I feel like that will come.
Yeah.
And my perspective is the rise of the East is happening right before our eyes. And I feel like there's a massive opportunity for Westerners to capitalize on the growth of the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
I truly see it it's been such a hotbed, a lot of turmoil, a lot of war, a lot of poverty. But I honestly, in my opinion, I see it that the tide is changing. And it's time for us to, capitalize on that. And I feel like our parents, my grandparents came to this country, but it's going to be the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren who are going to end up possibly going back. And if not moving there permanently, which I don't foresee, I love this country that we're part of. But I definitely feel like becoming a global citizen, it's the next opportunity.
That's true. That's true. It's the tide is changing right in front of our eyes. You said that your household is probably more culturally Lebanese than actually Lebanese people. And I'm just going to go off the bat and give credit to your parents, because that's who sets the tone for that kind of stuff. How did they do that? Like, what did they do to make sure that culturally, religiously, you guys stayed Lebanese?
So what many cultures or many individuals who are born here let's look at the Europeans. Let's look at Dearborn in general. You had many Polish, many Italian immigrants who came to this country. They worked for Ford. a lot of generation after generation, you learn this in sociology. It's called the melting pot. You lose your culture, you lose your faith, you lose your values, and it just becomes an American culture, right? It becomes McDonald's, it becomes sports, it becomes cowboys. That's just the culture of America. And for me, immigrant communities that hold on to their culture are the ones who end up impacting America the most and bring that beauty and diversity to America. Now, if you don't hold on to your culture or speak the religion, you're just going to be part of that system. For us, my great-grandfather was extremely successful in Beirut, like many other immigrant families. My mom used to share with me that she used to always see my great-grandfather have a gun by his bedside and a stack of cash. That's how she remembered him. And they left their wealth, their cars, their possessions for one thing, and that's to pursue the American dream, right? Opportunity. And to take on that risk, I feel like many of us today won't even be able to think of that. It's extremely difficult. Now, having said that, to leave behind a whole life, like just to cut off that generation, like all right, I'm gonna start a whole new livelihood in a different country, that takes a lot of courage, it takes a lot of risk, it takes a lot of hope. From my perspective, when you are able to do that, you best believe you're not going to forget about the culture or everything, the heritage that we left behind. What you're going to do is you're going to embody that culture, that heritage, the cuisine, the language, the faith, and you're going to bring it and you're going to introduce it to the American way, right? So I would consider myself a hybrid. Now, my parents, I mentioned that we didn't speak Arabic at home, but my grandparents on my dad's side, they didn't speak English. So it's extremely difficult to have a language barrier with your loved ones, or not being able to carry out a casual conversation. I understand Arabic better than I could speak it. I'm actually learning Arabic right now just so I can, my kids know it right now. So, but no, a lot of immigrants, whether you're from Lebanon or from other countries, if they don't understand that you can't even communicate with your grandparents because of the language barrier, they're not going to understand how important culture is. So for me, I wanted to make sure that, okay, if I don't necessarily can speak the language with my loved ones, I'm going to make sure that I embody the heritage, the ancestry, the culture of this land, and I'm going to make sure that I instill it in myself and in my children. My parents did a great job doing that. More so my mom than my dad. My mom was heavily involved in culture and faith, and so was my dad. But my dad was more of a he has that American work ethic, which I love and I respect and I admire.
Talk to me about your early childhood here, early adulthood too. Like now we see you're in the you're in the finances. We see you in a certain way, but how did that look early, like teenage years, early 20s? How did Khalil look back then? What did he used to do?
So Khalil had I've always had a spiritual connection with God. That's the first, like when you asked me, how do you look at yourself in the mirror? It's hard for me to even talk about myself, because for me, I'm just a representative of God, that I was put on this earth as a servant. And that's just how I interpret myself. So as a kid growing up, I used to tell my mom, like, Mom, I'm learning this about this figure in history class, and I used to tell her, look, I want to be in these books. Like I want to leave an impact on the world or a community or society or family. Like if you look at it from a micro perspective, I want to be remembered. I want to leave a legacy. Very early on. I'm talking, maybe elementary, definitely before middle school. I used to have that, and my mom used to look at me like she knew there was something there. And it's just, I've always had that fire in me ever since I was a kid. My teachers used to tell my parents, if we had 30 Khalils in class, they'd be in heaven. Like I was very well behaved, very quiet, very to myself. I was very cool with all the kids, whether you're in band, whether you're an athlete. It didn't matter to me. Sometimes I'd see kids sitting alone at lunch and I'd go sit right next to them. And I always felt like your reputation from who you are in high school carries forward with you forever.
You had that in mind while you were in high school?
I always had that in mind. Now, growing up, I raised in East Dearborn. We come from a blue-collar family. We never struggled, alhamdulillah. And I'm not talking about like we never felt like we had it all. And we did. Because if you just take, money's very important, but my father provided. My mother was nurturing. We had a great upbringing. We lived in East Dearborn, so our backyard was Anthony Park. So we always were outside playing, having friends over, neighbors. I remember a memory I had actually vividly. My dad picked me up from school when I was in like 5th grade, and it was my birthday. And we rolled up to the house, and I lived in an area where there was a cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
So it was a dead end. We would play hockey in the streets, football, basketball. And we rolled up to my house, and we opened up the garage, and I saw like probably 50 kids in the garage, and it was a surprise birthday party.
For you?
Yeah, for me. And I was a hockey fan, big time Detroit Red Wing hockey fan. And I remember my dad actually got me an authentic Brendan Shanahan jersey, and I still have it to this day. But like, these are just vivid memories, knowing that, all right, my parents always went above and beyond. If we wanted something, my mom would say, go ask dad. And dad wasn't a business owner. He wasn't an entrepreneur, blue collar worker, W-2 job. And, but they always managed to provide. We lived in a new house. My mother and father made good decisions in life. And I feel like, alhamdulillah, I owe it all to my parents. And what's interesting is, after elementary school, I actually went to Catholic school.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I went to Catholic school. That a lot of people didn't know that. So my father was very big on diversity, right? He didn't want us growing up just around the same neighborhood with the same people, with the same culture, with the same mentality.
Yeah.
So there were, back in Lebanon, our parents, I'm sure your parents may have experienced it as well. They went to Catholic or Orthodox Christian schools. The private schools were.
Lebanon's a Christian country.
And there's a lot of French influence.
Yeah.
So they were just used to that. Here, I feel like they were a little bit more shocked that my parents made that decision. Whereas back home, it was routine, it was normal.
Yeah.
So being around different faiths, different diverse groups of people, I feel like it was the greatest thing that happened to us. And I also went to Dearborn High, which was a great mix, very diverse school. So it wasn't like Fortson, where Fortson was all Arab or all predominantly Muslim high school. Dearborn High was on the west side, and there was a great mix. And I, to this day, feel like even in business and education and just relating to people, the emotional intelligence, being around diverse groups of people, diverse families, diverse cultures, faiths, it's a strength, and you just know how to speak to people.
It kind of sets you up for having all these clients from all over the country, being able to communicate with them all at the same level, and it has to come from, or part of it has to come from that.
Absolutely.
You being. Did you feel weird in that Catholic school?
That's a great question. We'd go to church. We would sing, with everybody else in church, but we did not walk up to the priest for the bread or the wine. They respected the fact that, because we weren't the only Muslims or Arabs in the school, there were quite a few families who would go there for the education, the curriculum. But it was fun. We'd have fun. We ran the school, to be honest. Like, when it came to sports, soccer, baseball, like, we ran the school. They all know about the Dabaja boys. Yeah. So
you're probably I've never heard anyone go into a Catholic school here. You're probably the first person to say that.
Yeah, it wasn't. I look at things as I mentioned earlier, being a global citizen. It's just about understanding people and understanding that they are. You never want to say Khalil Gibran says that. Don't say that I have the answer. Say that I know of an answer, because it's rude. It's disrespectful.
Yeah.
You're trying to tell somebody who's grown up away or belonged to a faith for many generations that, hey, you're wrong. It's not about, no, they know of a way. Yeah. Just like we do. So, and I feel like understanding others is definitely it's a golden ticket. It's a shortcut in a way. Like you mentioned, I do believe that my upbringing and being around diverse groups and actually working at my uncle's store in Northville, being around executives and, with the 0.5% of the country, very high net worth individuals, at such a young age, it exposes you to what's out there.
So that was the shift.
That was the
you,
shift.
You finished school and then you moved to your uncle's shop in Northville. And just for people that don't know, what does your uncle do?
So after high school, college is next, right? That's what you're told. That's how we're raised. For me, you want to go to the pre-med route, just like every other immigrant group.
You had that in mind.
I had that in mind. I wanted to be a physician. I wanted to be a physician for the sole purpose of helping others, reputation, financial security, and honoring my parents, right? My son's a doctor. So
You thought about that.
I thought about that. Of
Like
course, it was
everyone
always
does.
in my mind. It's
Yeah.
always in my mind. Everybody starts that way, and it's amazing when those prerequisite classes they're designed to weed people out, and it worked in my interest. So when I was in organic chemistry or biology, I simply was not interested. Like
The worst.
I'm in a group with 150 kids. Listen to this teacher who's just has zero energy, and I'm like, man, this is not cut for me. It's not. And now, thankfully, if I'm ever in a hospital or going on a doctor's appointment, I could never envision myself. I have nothing but respect for physicians, but I could never envision myself had been a doctor. My wife even tells me, like, can you imagine you would have been here? And I'm like, no, absolutely not. So what that did was it forced me to find a different route. And that's when working at my uncle's store in Northville. So he's a custom clothier, one of the best in the country. He has amazing clientele. This is where all of our, my clothes are from. So growing up in that environment and catering to the high net worth individuals and selling, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 suits at minimum to these individuals, it builds not only understanding relationships at the highest level. And you don't get that exposure when you're 18, 19 years old. You really don't. You'll probably people will never have that exposure in a lifetime. So I got that at such a young age by meeting people and understanding that the key to business and success is having access. And if you don't have access to certain individuals or businesses, the likelihood of you growing on your own is extremely difficult. So understanding that the ones that were spending the most money in his shop were executives and business related, I decided, you know what? It's in my best interest to go the accounting and finance route. So I majored both in accounting and finance.
So before we get into the accounting part, I wanted to ask you, so you were having regular conversations with these people on a daily basis, basically, these high net worth individuals?
Yeah, every time I'd be in the shop and they'd be around, they're completely normal humans. Like people, if you don't know, you assume that people are different, but that's not the case. And I think it's actually a sign of poverty for people to think that way, where they assume that somebody's wealthy or rich, that they're a bad person, they're an evil person, when it's quite the opposite. And having that scarcity mindset is what limits a lot of people's growth. And being around people that are extremely abundant in their thinking, they're not doing anything different. They're not better than you and I. They're not smarter than us. They just, worked hard, were presented an opportunity, and they capitalized on it. Most millionaires in America are self-made. I think it's like 70 or 80%. So I would speak to these individuals whenever I would work at the shop. But what's unique is, so if I wasn't working at the shop, I would speak through these people by speaking to my uncle.
Yeah.
My uncle Alexander, he opened up his shop at 23, 24 years old, the same time that I opened up my own practice at the same age. So he was an older brother to me, and it definitely helped expedite my growth and my success.
Is there a conversation that stood out to you that you still remember?
There's one specific individual that I remember who donated $1 million to the Northville High School, and he did it anonymously. This individual wears Wrangler jeans. He's got private jets, helicopters, extremely successful, and he donated $1 million anonymously. And to me, that's something I would never forget, because people assume when you get to that level, it's all about the flash and all about notoriety. And for someone, an individual, to do that without people knowing who it even is, I would never forget that story. And that's something that I aspire to one day do.
Like you said, we always want to show off that we did this, or we gave back to this part of the community, or we fed these people. A lot of people talk. So having that unanimously is a good lesson to learn at 19, 20. Um, so then you moved into the accounting finances, which is the most interesting topic in the world.
Yeah, it is.
Uh,
So exciting.
um, how how did that play out to you while you were that young? You were getting married. How did that kind of work?
So my uncle, my aunts, my uncles always said that Khalil can have a family and, at the age of 20. Like they always knew that I was always very professional, very mature at a young age. And I'd give that credit to my parents and to my relationship with God. Um, when I went into accounting and finance, it was never for the intention of working for a public company. So as I mentioned earlier, growing up, I used to tell my mom, look, I want to do something special. I want to be remembered. I want to leave a legacy. I want to help others. I want to leave an impact. So when you go to college, the education system teaches you to be an employee. They don't teach you to be a business owner or an entrepreneur.
That's how it is.
That's how it is. That's how it's designed. Now, even in university, they're teaching you to be an employee. So when I'm in these accounting and finance courses and I'm listening to taxation, audit, nonprofit accounting, you're learning it from a perspective of public accounting. I had many friends who went the public accounting route. So when you graduate university, the traditional route is you graduate, you work for a big four accounting firm, you get your CPA license, and they work you like a dog. You hopefully become a partner in 10, 15 years. Okay. Partners like the highest level at the public accounting perspective. They work you like it's a corporate world.
You knew that before you went into accounting, right?
Before I even enrolled in a course of accounting.
You knew this information.
I knew we were going to open up an accounting and business consulting practice, my brothers and I, and we're going to service small business owners across the country without having a single client.
And you still thought that you were going to leave a legacy and be remembered, and you wanted to go through accounting. And I'm asking you this because usually when a lot of people say they want to be remembered, they want to leave a legacy, but they don't shoot for the accounting route. They'll be like, oh, I want to be a doctor. I'll go on mission trips. I'll build a legacy like that, or I'll be an engineer, grow, whatever. You rarely hear of people be like, yeah, I want to leave a legacy. I'm going to go do accounting. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you had that in mind. You knew what you were going into.
So growing up, I knew I wanted to make an impact. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew I was going to do something to make it to be impactful. Usually you have politicians, like you mentioned, doctors, missionary trips, engineers, people who impact the livelihood of others. They usually leave an impact. Accountants, the textbook look or version of an accountant is a pocket protector, glasses, overweight, boring. And actually accounting in general has one of the highest suicide rates out of every profession. It does. So from my perspective, being accountable in general is something I hold myself to on a personal and business level. Now, for me, how we got into social media was we're going to take an extremely boring subject like numbers, and we're going to make it attractive. We're going to make it fun. We're going to make it energetic. That's how we've positioned ourselves in the market space. Now, I don't know about you, but there are a few things I can count on my hand that are extremely important in life, and money is one of them. So for me, financial literacy, financial freedom, educating business owners on how to keep more of their profits in their pockets or invested within their business or invested with their families as opposed to giving it to the government, that allows you to create prosperity. It allows you to create generational wealth. It allows you to create successful communities if that money is being spent in the communities. So for me, I think business accounting, business advisory is at the top of the list when it comes to how you can impact the social wellness of communities. I think it's probably the ultimate way to impact, because if you look at most people's problems when it comes to poverty, a lot of it has to do with the level of income that they're making. A lot of communities that are unhealthy are most likely on government assistance. And they're on government assistance because they're not financially educated. So, and there's nothing wrong with being on government assistance. It's actually a bridge. It's a beautiful system that allows people to, America allows you to start from the bottom.
Yeah.
They will assist you. They will help you with your necessities. But the key is not to abuse the system. The
Not
key
to
is
stay at the bottom.
not to stay at the bottom. And it's actually, if I look at it sometimes, it's where it's designed to keep you at the bottom. And many people fall prey to that. But in my perspective, the best way to use the system is you qualify. You get the best health insurance. You'll get, food aid, take care of your family. But use this as a bridge. Use this as a way to go from point A to point B. And from my perspective, there's nothing more honorable in the business field than what we're doing.
Yeah.
I'm very confident in that.
Yeah. And you said that you started this business with your brothers. Now, I don't know what kind of advice you got before you started, but I was always told, if you ever want to go into business, never do it with family.
That's a very common perception to have. And I understand it because even within, my family, you have not my intermediate family, but uncles, great uncles. You have people who have their relationships have been broken up due to business. It's extremely common. Something I always think about is the first biblical Quranic crime that was committed was the story of Abel and Cain, where the two brothers, one killed the other. So it's something that I always think about. It's something we always reflect on, that it's extremely hard to do business with family. But growing up, I knew that as the oldest son, as the oldest sibling, and just having that leadership role in me, I knew that I wanted to pave the way for my family to succeed, not just my brothers. That includes my mom and dad, my sister, and everybody around us. Now, the reason why I did that is because one thing I always hated growing up was seeing one brother who's extremely successful and other brothers who weren't. It would bother me. And for me, there's a saying that I came across lately. It's only sit at the dinner table with people who you would starve with. And for me, people that I would starve with are my brothers. And when I look at the children of our family, and I look at the wives, and I look at my parents, and I see how, alhamdulillah, we've been blessed through the hard work of us collectively working together. This is just the beginning for us. And it's important to make sure that if there are differences, these are hashed out. Nothing is a sensitive subject amongst us. We do understand each other's roles. I have strengths and weaknesses. My brothers have strengths and weaknesses. We support each other. But there's something special about brotherhood. There's something even more special about brotherhood that shares the same DNA and same blood. Because I know that we're in a very, sensitive business. And it's extremely difficult for me to trust anybody to walk in through our doors that I would share finances with or, success stories with. And I
like
feel
you said, people's livelihoods is in your hands. You're dealing with the money.
They're in our hands. We take it extremely serious. We have access to sensitive information. And people who know us understand that, we've actually, I don't want to dive into this, but I'm very protective of my brothers as well. So like if I see any of my brothers being disrespected, I will always be that older brother and always defend my brothers. And they would do the same for me. Like at the end of the day, we're scrappers too.
Yeah.
So, and I have some great stories that I've shared with my brothers, highs, lows. Nothing is perfect, but we have those common denominators that are inseparable. And I would take a bullet for them, and I know that they would do the same for me.
How do you deal with differences though? Like when they do happen, because they're gonna happen, especially when you spend a lot of time with someone. How do you kind of deal with it, or what's the understanding among you guys? Because when differences happen, and the right word isn't fights, but disagreements. What's the process of hashing that out and keeping it separate from your personal lives? Because you have kids, they have kids. You sit at the dinner table, you don't be talking about your differences at the dinner table. How do you separate that work from your family life?
That's a great question. I would say that's something I do a bad job at. I don't separate uh, personal and business. For me, it's all one. And especially that I share this relationship with my brothers. If we have an issue at the office, it comes home. I'll be honest. Like, it's extremely difficult to separate that because we look at our business as it's a family business, and our business is operated by family values, like love, honesty, integrity, loyalty. These are things that we live by. If we do have a difference, the best thing we do is we talk about it, we communicate about it, we sit together, and we don't leave the office until it's resolved. Nothing will go under the rug. I believe that's a sign of weakness if you don't solve problems. We're put on earth to be problem solvers. And the more problems that you can solve, the more rewarded you will be. And stress is good if you see that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So let's say we're growing as an accounting firm. And when we first started off, we weren't financially established. We're putting in sweat equity with each other to make sure that, look, we're going to make this work. And what's interesting is this is not one person who's doing this. It's not one income that you have to generate. Everything that we do has to be in multiples.
Yeah.
Everything, which makes it even more difficult, but also more exciting and more challenging. And we're up for the challenge. But my advice would be to always, if you're going to work with family, make sure that you share common values. You can't have one brother who's, on one side of the spectrum, and then you have another brother on the other side. It doesn't work. They're like, water and oil. So we share common denominators, common values. We have we have common dreams. And from my perspective, I know that my brothers count on me, and they believe in me. But I push back as well. Like, look, this is not just me. You guys, I want you to have your own dreams and ambitions and aspirations. And if they're all aligned, which they are, we're going to do this together. It's better to row in the same direction. Three is always better than one.
Oh, yeah.
So, and from my perspective, I mentioned earlier that we're scrappers. I say that proudly. You have to have a chip on your shoulder and be proud of where you come from. And when your back is against the wall, you have two choices. You're either going to fight back or you're going to collapse.
You're going to fold.
We're fighters. So, and we're very proud of that. So I know that if I'm going to war, I have my brothers that are going to war with me. And sometimes it's not about the size of the army that you have. It's about the size of the heart. And we can compete with, anybody. And that's how we look at it from our perspective. If you have, 10 solid individuals who are that are battle tested, ready to go to war together to fight for a mission or a purpose or a vision that they have, they'll beat an army of 100.
Oh,
and
yeah.
we know this historically.
Definitely.
So
what's one thing that you strive to teach your younger brothers?
My job is to always learn from others as well. So you're a teacher, but I'm also a student at the end of the day. And I can learn a lot from them, and I can learn a lot from others. But one thing that I love to hammer is strength. Strength is the most important trait that any man has to have. And with that comes like so many subsidiaries, right? So strength is, let's say, the parent company. There are so many subsidiaries that define strength. But strength is something that if you don't have strength, you don't have anything. You're going to be taken advantage of. You're going to have weakness. So for me, as men in the Dabaja household, we're very big on being strong, being leaders, and not having any weakness, because this is our duty as men, as husbands, as fathers, as sons, as brothers. Like, this is something we have to have. You can teach passion, love, affection, courage. You can teach that, but you can't teach strength. You either have it or you don't. That's one thing that I always try to hammer home. Like, we got this.
One of the first times, early days when we first met, we were leaving, and you said, "Be strong, don't be careful." And you said how important that word is in your day-to-day life with your brothers. That, yeah, you tell your brothers, "Be strong, don't be careful."
Yeah, I think that's like fatherly advice that I received from my dad. It was always, my dad taught us discipline. He taught us strength. He taught us how to be good sons too. Like if he saw dishes in the sink, he'd say, "What are you waiting for? You wanting your mom to do the dishes? Go do the dishes. You waiting for, is your mom your maid?" You know. So like at the same time, it was responsibility. So when it comes to, it's more of an abundance mindset. When you say be careful, of course you want to be careful. It's such a, the world, the dunya, the matrix, the society. It's a cold world we live in. It's a cold world, and you must be strong or be able to adapt in this environment. And if you're not, you're gonna be a casualty.
Yeah.
You're gonna be a casualty to this world, which so many people are. And I honestly feel like the only people who are left standing are the ones who are strong. They're the ones that aren't casualties. And it's like, how long can we hold on for? It's extremely easy to comply and just to be like everybody else. It's extremely difficult to resist, to be strong, to have values. And mentioning my dad, he taught us to be strong. Why? Because through his experience and his job, he saw probably the worst things in people. And it's not about don't tiptoe the line and be careful. No, be strong. If something comes your way, you better be able to defend yourself. You better be able to adapt to the environment, to the position you're in. It was, I wouldn't say a militant upbringing, but it was definitely something that I love.
Yeah.
I love, and I you don't know the value of your father until you become a father.
Yeah.
And I have a phenomenal relationship, thank God, with my dad. I'm very fortunate for that. And you know, it's so important to have positive male figures in your life.
Yeah.
So that's something I love. Be strong.
Be strong. And what you're saying is basically, don't just live like you're surviving and you're trying to avoid this and you're trying to avoid that. Like just walk through the wall, basically.
Walk through the fire.
Yeah.
Be the fire.
Yeah.
Anything that you throw into the fire, you absorb it and it becomes a bigger fire.
Now, my follow-up question is, what have your brothers taught you?
My brothers taught me to be patient. They taught me to look at things from a different lens, more of a human element, which I love. My brothers can be, to be honest, like my brothers are hotheads. Like they're probably more aggressive than I am, to be honest. Like I'm actually the patient one. I'm actually the one who tries to just be a little bit more understanding. But actually, you know what? The side that they taught me was the feisty side.
Was it?
Yeah, they're the little brothers, man. They used to gang up on me growing up. It was always 2 against 1. But maybe I'd say teamwork too. They taught me to collaborate with each other, be part of the team, but always have that edge and always have something to prove.
Yeah. And since we're on the topic of family, you mentioned that you got married very early on. How did that kind of happen and shape how the rest of your 20s went?
That's a great question. I'm very proud of my relationship. Alhamdulillah, thank God. I got married, so I met my wife at 20 years old. Okay, I was turning 21. I have a funny story, but I'm not going to share it with you. I shared it with you privately.
Okay. I'll turn off the cameras right now.
So I met my wife, and through phone exchanges, it was like, look, I need to tell my dad. This is 2 weeks into this. We're getting to know each other by phone. I need to tell my dad. And I was like, okay. When she said that, I knew she was the one, because there's just so much respect for the father and the mother and just family in general, that this is not something that I'm willing to risk. And she wasn't willing to risk that either. So when she told her dad about me, he was like, he's 20 years old. Like, who is this guy? You're making him seem like he's a king. He was comparing me to other 20-year-olds. He's like, who's his family? And what happened was he called her grandfather, who was overseas in Lebanon, her grandparents, and he was telling them about me and my family. Because in our culture, as you know, something that I love is we all know each other. Mm-hmm. We all know what village or what city, what's the family reputation like. Yeah. So when he said who I was, the son of so-and-so, his grandfather is this, his uncles are that.
Ask around.
They ask
Get
around.
the report.
It's gangster.
Yeah.
So because of that, I got the stamp of approval. Give him a chance. So me being the opportunist that I am, when I see a door open, I'm gonna go in guns blazing. So when I met my father-in-law, we sat down, we talked about his daughter, who she was so nervous. We talked about it for probably 20 minutes, and the rest of the time we were talking about business.
Yeah.
So he loved that. He's an entrepreneur. He's very successful, and he loved that we understood each other. We clicked. Of course, he asked me some questions. One of the first questions he actually asked me was, and I was like preparing for an interview. One of his first questions was education. My daughter is studying for her master's program. What are your thoughts on education? And I called him Ammo out of respect. I said, Ammo, education is extremely important to me. And I want my wife, your daughter, to be I want her to be educated, and I want her to be independent. Because if God forbid something happens to me, I don't want anybody to have to help my family or our children that we're going to share together. When he saw that, I think that's why we ended the meeting so quickly and we started talking about business, because he knew, like, all right, this guy's the one.
Yeah.
I feel confident that I can put my daughter in his possession and in his hands, and I know that she's going to live a good life, and they're going to be successful together, and they're going to make many great memories together and have children and have a beautiful family together. You know, as a father, that's extremely difficult to present your daughter to another man. It's extremely difficult.
A stranger
that you don't even know anything about. So knowing that he felt so secure that I was going to make sure that I take care of his daughter, I'm going to give her a life that he gave her, which was incredible, and I'm going to match that, if not do even more. And that's something that I take pride in. And for me, when he saw that, I was very generous in thinking that way. And you know, I actually want her to be extremely successful. And I want our kids to be successful. I don't want to be dependent on anybody. He respects that as a business owner, because he helps a lot of people and he's not dependent on anybody either.
And at that very early age too, like you said, you were 20. So him seeing that in you at 20 with basically a kid still says a lot.
And you know what's nice is he gave us the opportunity to grow together. So the rules were, you get to know my daughter in my house. After I meet your parents, they can get to know my daughter as well. So like right after I met him, he wanted to meet my parents. And I remember I told my parents, and they're like, you know, isn't that so early?
Yeah.
You're only 20 years old, 21 years old. You haven't finished your education yet. You're just getting started, which I completely understand, because as parents, when you are going to take on another daughter, right, a daughter-in-law, you want to make sure that your son can support her, and take care of her. So I understand the perspective they looked at it as well, but they respected that so much that, wow, what an honorable man that he actually wants to meet us. We're going to get to know our future daughter-in-law. So those were the rules. We were engaged for a while, so we got to experience things. We have the greatest story. It's truly a success story that many young couples go through. I was starting off my practice. She was finishing her master's program. She went back to school 2 weeks after having our first son, Abraham. So there was a lot. We started from nothing. We grew organically, never took out a loan, never purchased a book of business. And it's something that we look back at now and we say, wow, we're truly blessed and fortunate to be in this position, but we are not settling.
Alhamdulillah.
So alhamdulillah, very blessed for that.
Did you ever expect that you were going to get married that early though?
I always knew.
You knew?
I always knew, and I actually encourage many young men out there to man up, be able to see past the smoke screens. There are so many distractions that are out there in life. Everybody wants your attention. And from my perspective, don't be afraid to pull the trigger. If you know, so for me, I didn't date or talk to other girls. Like, I knew if I was going to get serious with a girl, it's for marriage. It's not for anything else. Like, I'm not interested in that. So, you know the one. And actually, a funny story is, when I actually saw my wife, when I saw her in public for the first time, I was like, man, who is this girl, right? And do you know why I pursued her?
Why?
She didn't look at me.
No way.
She didn't look at me. She didn't give me any attention. And I said, okay, she's different. She's not like the rest of them.
Yeah.
So I pursued her, and I made sure that like that was a good sign to me, right? There were so many other common denominators that we share. So for me, like what I would like to discuss is, don't be afraid to make a commitment. Today, at this day and age, it's not that people are afraid to get married or pursue a business or pursue education. It's they're afraid of commitment. And I feel like the ultimate test is, are you able to commit as a man, as a woman? Are you able to commit to anything that you do? Can you commit to a spouse? Can you commit to your education? Can you commit to a passion, a hobby? Can you commit to a business? And for me, what separates the men from the boys is those who are able to commit.
I agree. But you said one of the signs that kind of did it for you was when she didn't look. But like on a more serious note, what are the signs that young men should be looking at to, like, what should young men be looking at in a spouse when they want to get married? Let's say someone is serious, he really wants to get married. What should he be looking for?
My perspective on this is a little bit different, even as a man. From my perspective, I think there's great girls out there. There are phenomenal girls who are brought up in great households. My suggestion is, number one, the man needs to become a man. They need to have great work ethic. They need to put down the video games. They need to pick up a book. They need to start up a business, or not even start up a business. Go the corporate route. Work hard. Give up hanging out with your friends. Honestly, start working on yourself. There's a time and place for business, and there's a time and place for friends. But marriage is such a short window of opportunity. And I feel like if you're not 30 years old being 30 is a great time to get married. Honestly, you're established, you're educated, and you're ready for that chapter. But at the end of the day, the market space is a lot larger when you're in your 20s. Okay? When you're in your 20s, let's say under 25, and you have you meet a girl who's younger than you, that's the ultimate time to pull the trigger. But to answer your question, what do you look for? For me, there are common denominators that are non-negotiable. And it all depends on the type of lifestyle that you want to have. From my perspective, faith was number one. Reputation. How do I see my wife as the mother of my children?
Mm-hmm.
Does she respect her father, her mother, her siblings? What's her thoughts on work ethic? What's her thoughts on the political space? These are important conversations to have, the hard conversations to have. These are what I call common denominators. As long as you have the similar common denominators and values and beliefs, nobody's perfect. Nobody's, what we use the word masum, infallible.
Yeah.
People make mistakes, guys and girls. So I feel like just like you judge the man, you judge the woman, you have to judge the man.
Yeah.
Right? So like from that perspective, I feel like once everybody understands that when you're talking to each other, you're not getting to know this girl because of pleasure. You're getting to know her because of commitment. You want to start a life with this woman.
A long-term vision.
Long-term vision.
For the family.
Don't waste your time. Don't waste her time. And if there's ever that opportunity there, my thing is never tell a girl you love her if you don't. Ever. Because it's messed up, And I put the ball in the guys' court. Women they're extremely adaptable. They're resilient in many ways, a lot more resilient than men. And they naturally want a gentleman as a husband, somebody who's going to look after them, somebody who's going to take care of them financially, even security-wise. Like they want to feel like you're not going to be a little, a sissy. You're going to be a pushover. They want a strong man, naturally. You're talking about hundreds of thousands of years of evolution. So my advice would be take care of yourself as a man first before you try to take care of another life to have in your possession. But when you start at such a young age, you guys will get to understand each other and grow together. Like, don't be afraid of growing together. I started with nothing, zero. I used to drive like a clunker, but my wife never judged me on that ever, because she knew, and her family knew, that when I talk, I mean what I say. And you prove it through actions. Actions speak louder than words. I feel like the men have to work on themselves first before they can even pursue any woman.
Khalil, on that point, with growing up together, I feel like one of the difficulties is when you, like, the guy or the girl mess up, it gets hard because you have to kind of not overlook like the mistakes, but you have to understand, like, this person's still very young, we're still very young, I'm going to make mistakes, she's going to make mistakes, and you both have to have that agreement that you are going to see my mistakes because we're experiencing this together firsthand. So was that kind of like a common understanding between you guys, like, yeah, we are going to mess up here, maybe I make a mistake here, but you're still 20, you're very young, you're trying to learn how to maybe talk to a female properly, maybe like how to treat her well. It's
a good question. From my perspective, I truly feel like the man has the ultimate way of making his wife feel happy or sad, and it's on the man. I really do. Of course, there are some women who put their husbands through hell, but guess what? You should have suspected that those common denominators earlier on before you made that commitment. So I see it from both sides, but I feel like the man has the ultimate way of making the household happy or sad, right? So mistakes happen, but there are some mistakes that are red lines. So like, what mistakes can possibly happen, right? Making sure, my mom and dad always gave us the advice, never go to sleep after an argument. Like, make sure you guys fix your issues before going to bed together. Like, it drives me nuts. Like, how can you sleep next to your spouse if you guys hate each other, if you guys had an argument or whatever? Like, how physically, how can you,
if you're in disagreement?
Yeah. It's insane. So I feel like there are many distractions that seep into the home. Now, I look at it from a societal perspective. The house is the last sacred space left. It's the last space of privacy. You don't know what goes on behind closed doors. Nobody does, unless you're sitting there posting your personal marriages or children from your home. But it's the last sacred space. And I believe there are many entities, whether corporations or even individuals, jealous friends, or that are trying to infiltrate that. They're trying to infiltrate because most problems come from exterior people, drama, family or friends, money issues, financial issues, disagreements. Like, for me as a guy, I don't care if my cologne bottle was moved from one place to another. And for me, I laugh, like, when I hear that, oh, this guy was so upset that this happened. It's like, bro, like, these are your problems. Like, this is what we're talking about right now. I feel like to avoid those problems, you have to be like, you have too much time on your hands. If you have too much time, the idle mind is the devil's playground. So you got to be busy. You have to be chasing a purpose. You got to be building something. You have to look after your children, your wife. Like, they're counting on you to be the leader. So once again, the ball is in the man's court. They need to own up. They need to man up. And at the same time, men are seeking affection, love, security, warmth. This is what they want, right? You're out of the house battling on the battlefield. Nobody knows what goes on outside the home.
No one.
When you come home, you can have the worst day ever. But when your kids run into your arms and your wife greets you at the door, it's the ultimate success. It's the ultimate success that I hope many men and women aspire to be. I really do.
Yeah. And that's why you're private. Like, you are a pretty private individual. Now, from everything that you said, from you speaking to your mother at a young age and kind of keeping to yourself, so you kind of were always private. But in this like social boom that we have here, that kind of made you more private because you don't share your like your personal life. You keep your like what you show people on social media is strictly business.
It's strictly business. I would never compromise myself or my family for fame. For me, we're doing this for the fortune. We're not doing this for the fame. And if the fame comes with it, cool. It gives me an opportunity to be a great representative of my faith and of my family. And I'm very proud to do that. So privacy is important in my life, even when I was a kid. So due to my dad's, his job, he never brought work home. We never talked about work on the dinner table. And he's in a position where he knows a lot about what goes on within the community. And he would never talk about that at home. And people would assume that he would, because what husband or father doesn't talk with his children about what happened at the office today, right? But my dad never did that. He never brought work home. So for us growing up, privacy was extremely important, and confidentiality and trust. So when somebody shares something with myself or my family, I've been known as a lockbox. Like, it's important. People cherish good relationships and being able that they can trust you, especially these days. So for me, deciding to go on social media was a well thought out decision, knowing that privacy could be sacrificed, but it wasn't. Why? Because I decide what I want to show. And I guarantee you, if I wanted to show more, if I wanted to be a little bit more intimate and share what goes on behind the scenes, I would have millions of followers. But I'm not willing to trade that. For me, privacy is number one. There are some very vicious people online. And look at it from this perspective. These are complete strangers. They don't know you. You don't know them. How do you feel comfortable enough to share your wife, your children, your possessions with complete strangers? That's mind-boggling to me. And I feel like many people overlook that. For what? Is it because you need validation? I don't need any validation. My validation is from God. And I know that the worst thing you can do is put that eye on you for people to be envious of. And envy can come from just doing business as well. Like, it doesn't come from possessions. It could be, wow, they're healthy. I wish I was healthy. But I think when your purpose and your mission is to help others, there has to be some compromises. And for the stuff that we put out, the things that I talk about, I swear, Jafar, I'm doing this on one leg. Like, this is the last priority on my work day. It's after we've helped all of our clients. We've worked on the priority items. My social media is last when it should be number one. It should be number one. It really should, because we have clients in the space who that's their job. Maybe one day it will be, but for now, I'm not willing to give up any of my private life for the public. I think it's the best of both worlds, where you can balance being private and also being a figure online.
So you brought up your kids multiple times during, and what's like one thing you make sure to instill in your kids?
I instill strength, love, affection, honor, being a dreamer. I always ask my kids every time they wake up, what did you dream about? Oh, I can't remember. No, you had to dream of something. And when I kiss them goodnight and I read a scripture to them, or the Fatiha, I always tell them, don't forget to dream. That's so important to me. Why?
That's how you end it?
That's how I end it. Don't forget to dream. I give them a kiss and I walk out of the room. It's so important to me. Why? Because anything is possible. Anything. And I wish people had more ambition and had more fire and didn't give up and just pursued what they're just passionate about. Like, be obsessed. Don't sell yourself short. Don't worry about everybody else. Like, I literally don't hear anybody. I don't. And I'm sure there's talk out there, but I don't hear. I don't see. I'm a man on a mission, and I'm focused on my business and my family and making an impact. And you can make a hell of a larger impact when you're financially established. You can help people. You can influence people, help communities that are underprivileged. And just having these type of conversations, like this is, the Prophet talks about how a smile is being charity.
Mm.
You wouldn't believe how many times I'll meet a completely random person. I'll just smile at them. And they could be a janitor, or an old, the elderly. And I'll just smile at them. And I'll ask them, how are you doing? How's everything? And that would, one time I was walking through the airport once, and I saw a janitor, a black man in Georgia. I believe he was Hispanic, because he told me he looked like my son, and I'm not black.
Yeah.
So he looks at me, he starts crying. Because I smiled to him, I said, how are you? And he started crying. And he tells me his son was killed like 2 weeks ago, and that I reminded him of his son. And I'm sure he's mourning, so he could say that to a lot of people. But just like you wouldn't believe how far a smile goes, or an introduction. Because people are struggling. People are going through a lot, mentally, physically, spiritually. So there are many ways of being charitable outside of money.
And that's kind of goes back to what you said about why you should be strong, why you should be that, you should be a strong figure. So people like that have a shoulder to cry on, rather than you crying on someone else's shoulder.
100%. Look, one of my favorite workouts, body parts that I like to work out, are my back and my shoulders. Why? Because metaphorically, you're carrying the weight on your shoulders, right? Or you're putting people on, you got people's back, whether it's family, whether it's clients, whether it's strangers. And I feel like not everybody has that ambition or has those natural God-given talents, right? But it's in us. It's in every single individual. It's just a matter of how deep is it in you for you to pull it out.
Yeah.
That's all it takes. And I would, give speeches or I talk to a lot of young men. And after I talk to them, I feel like I can run through a wall, right? But there's a difference between motivating and lifestyle. My job and my goal is to convert it to a lifestyle for many young men. You just have to go after it. Go after what you're passionate about. Never take no as an answer. If people think you're crazy, it's a good thing. You have to be realistic. You have to be practical. And take people's advice. Like I have, my inner circle is bulletproof. Okay? And like I said, there are infiltrators always out there. But if you are so insulated and you have just a circle, you don't chirp or pillow talk to anybody, you're protecting yourself at the end of the day. But listen to your inner circle. Listen to your parents. Respect your parents. Because one day when you become a father, you're going to bend down and you're going to kiss your mom's feet and you're going to kiss your father's feet. And understand the stress that came with being a parent. For me, my motivation is giving back to my parents, first and foremost, my family, and my community. That's something that I'm going to do, inshallah.
You talked about your lifestyle, and how does it look like? Like, what's a typical day in Khalil's life?
Mind, body, soul. That's it.
That was quick.
That's it. Mind, body, soul. So what does that consist of? I will share this because it's intimate, but it's also very beneficial for many entrepreneurs out there, students, to follow. Because for me, Benjamin Franklin says, early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. Okay? For me, I look at it spiritually from a point where Fajr prayer, the morning prayer, is designed for you to wake up right before the sun comes up over the horizon. So if you look at yourself from a universal perspective, you're being awakened as the sun,
day starts.
as the day starts, as the sun is rising. Okay? So there's something spiritually about that, right? That's very special. When you get to a level in life and in business where you have so much responsibility, so much stress that nobody sees, the most intimate hours of the day are in the morning when everybody's sleeping. My phone is on Do Not Disturb. I'm not taking any calls. I'm not taking any emails. My family's sleeping. It's just me praying to God. And that's the first thing I do. And I'm very public about that. Why? Because a guy in my position would be flashing dollars, cars, jets, yachts, traveling. But that's not, that's all fun. It's all fun. It gets old, right? But from my perspective, when you have that one-on-one, let's look at life a little bit more deeper. And you have that one-on-one relationship and you're putting your head on the ground, just like the prophets and saints did, even Jesus put his head on the ground. You are telling your Lord that you are above me and I am just a human being. I'm your servant.
I'm nothing.
I'm nothing. I am nothing. I am a particle in the universe, right? We are nothing, but we are also everything at the same time. Imam Ali talks about that. You have the universe within you. You think you're a small matter, that you don't matter, don't matter, but the whole universe is within you. So once again, it's that yin and yang, push and pull way of life, where you're constantly reflecting on that. And it's hard to become, we think that you can't become successful in the world and then have a good afterlife.
Mm-hmm.
The key is to have the best of both.
Yes.
And that is possible, right? God willing. Now, back to my routine. So when you're on the prayer mat and everybody's sleeping, and now you start to hear the birds chirping, and now, the sun is rising, you're like, okay, that's the first thing I do. I thank God for everything that I have, and I ask for more because he listens.
Yeah.
Right?
And he tells you to ask for more.
He tells you, remember me and I will remember you. So, and then I immediately after that, I read a little bit while I drink my espresso, and I share that online. And then after I read, work on my schedule for the day, I work out. Because if I don't work out in the morning, keep in mind, everybody's still sleeping. If I don't work out in the morning, the likelihood of me working out after my day has to come at a sacrifice. So would I rather sacrifice my sleep, so wake up early, do the things that I have to do in order to succeed, or spend less time with my kids? When I come home, I belong to them. And whether I'm tired, whether I'm exhausted, something that Kobe Bryant always talks about is they don't know if you're tired. They don't know the stresses that you had at work.
Nor should they.
Nor should they, right? You walk into that house, I don't care how exhausted you are. You're going to spend time with your kids. You're going to play. And it's a grind until they go to bed. And then you're exhausted. But there has to be sacrifice. And for me, my routine, whether it's the prayer, the working out, the reading, going to work, coming home, my routine revolves around our family lifestyle. I'm willing to sacrifice my sleep, but you have to be in bed at a reasonable hour. I'm willing to sacrifice my sleep and then my family all day. Like, I think that's very selfish if you don't do that. And some advice I'd give fathers, work out in the morning. Do not work out after work, because that's family time. Work out in the morning. Your kids and hopefully your wife waits for you all day to come home. And for you to be at the gym working out, it's very selfish. Get up early, work out, get it out of the way. You're going to be more consistent. You're going to feel great throughout the day, and then go to work.
I love that. We're going to end with one question. And I'm so curious to know, like, on those days where you're mentally exhausted, when you're tired, when you don't feel like going out and you still have to, like, where do you go on those days? Like, how do you cope with all that stress if there's a problem, like a serious problem?
It's just another day at the office, right? Something that we always discuss. For me, I don't think in that way. I really don't. Alhamdulillah, I mean, there's tests in life that we all have, and I have been tested. But I believe if you are mentally strong.
That's what I kind of meant, mentally. How do you talk to yourself? How do you talk yourself out of that? You can't talk yourself out of the problem, but you can talk yourself into not being down from that problem.
We're all human, so there are ups and downs, right? Let's face it. But I honestly don't even, I can't, it's so hard to even answer this question because I don't even remember a time where I've had to be in that position. Like, for me, It's more of, how do I just keep going? Like, I'm too busy to even think about how I feel. I don't think about how I feel. I do the same. Routine is extremely powerful and extremely boring, but you have to do it. My thing is, if I skip a day of working out, or if I miss, something at work that was overlooked, which I honestly can't remember that. It's, for me, I see it as a weakness. And I feel like that's I own up to it, right? But I'm never in a position where I feel like, I don't feel like going to the office today. In 10 years, I've never, I could proudly say, felt like, man, I have to go to work today. I have to go to the office.
Never.
Ever. I'm extremely happy with what we do, because think about it. Is it the accounting? Is it the taxes? No, absolutely not. It's the fact that I look at it from a lens of, we are helping people. We are helping business owners understand a foreign language, and we're really good at it. Are there those that are out there that have more experience than us? Yeah, probably.
Maybe.
But it's nothing that we can't hire at the end of the day. And another thing is, we're fighters. Like, we know how to, we're entrepreneurs at heart. I've been described as an entrepreneur who happens to be an accountant. Okay? We understand numbers, we understand business, but it's far more than that. If you ask me, what are the conversations that we're having with our clients? Maybe the first 15, 20 minutes is, here are your numbers, here are your results, here are our recommendations to reduce your tax liability. The next half of our meetings, we talk about life, family, goals, ambitions, what's next. Our whole practice, like, we're surrounded by success. So I believe, if I look at it from a higher level, where you ask me, all right, how do you cope with down days? I don't have those down days. And if I do, I like, for example, when it rains, I love to be at work. I love it. It's rainy. Some people look at the weather and it affects them. For me, I don't let exterior, there are only so many things that you can control in life. What can you truly control? Can you control the family that you're born in? Can you control the weather? Can you control the city that you belong to? Not necessarily. You really can't. These are the cards that you're dealt with. How do I play this hand? That's what it comes down to. This is what you're dealt with. What decisions are you going to make? And I feel like this is all, at the end of the day, we're all travelers. We're all coming through this world traveling. So at the final destination, that, we really don't know what's on the other side. We think we know, right? And we do know based on our conviction and our faith. But do we truly? Have we seen?
We haven't seen.
Yeah. But we've seen with the heart. So, and I feel like if you allow that to guide you, and you know that this place is a dark place, why are you surprised with these things that are happening to society?
You have to expect to be hard.
We expect it to happen because we know what's to come. So there are no surprises. And
expect it and thrive in it.
You don't survive, you thrive. And that's something that I live by. It's not about comfort. Like, if, okay, we land a new client. Awesome. Great. Next. Okay. Oh, wow. Did you know that you were doing? Cool. Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate it. Next. That's just the mentality to have. I always loved athletes, right? Growing up, I've always, wanted to be an athlete. And I played sports in high school, played sports recreationally, didn't, play sports in college. But there's something about being in the arena, being the man in the arena, and having your supporters and the people who believe in you cheer you on. And I feel like I am in the arena, and I have my supporters and my family who cheer me on, who know that we're onto something special, right? And it's the opposite of what a spectator is. A spectator is the person in the crowd that's either cheering you on or is talking, right? You'll never find a spectator do what the man in the arena is doing. So, and that's how I look at life, honestly. Are you going to be the man in the arena?
And you perform for those people that you love, that are looking for cheering you on.
You perform, you train, you obsess over your goals. And for me, it's in business. And my success rate is determined by how many people around me will be successful. And that includes clients. We are surrounded by successful business owners, successful clients. There are no clients who waste our time or who aren't doing well, honestly. We're very selective. And I feel like we've created this life by being able to be so selective. So when you're surrounded by that, by good vibes, good energy, motivation, everybody pushing each other, there's no room for toxicity or any negative stuff. And if there is, we eliminate it immediately.
That's true. Thank you, Kel. This was very nice.
It's my pleasure. You're the man, Jay Money.